Welcome to the Win at Home First podcast. I'm your host, Corey Carlson. This podcast is where we talk about how successful business leaders win, not only at work, but also at home. On this podcast, we'll go behind the scenes with great leaders to hear stories of how they win. Thank you for listening, and on to today's episode. Hello, this is Corey. Today's episode was Chase Coffman, a former Mizzou Tiger football player. So that's a fun one since that is where I went to college. And he also played in the NFL. The conversation was great, where we talked about servant leadership. We talked about his faith in the locker room and how that can apply to you and I in our day jobs. But I also loved our discussion when I asked him, did he get fulfillment out of the NFL? His answer, our discussion, was just great. And I hope you enjoy this episode as much as I enjoyed the conversation. On to today's episode. Hello, this is Corey Carlson. You're listening to Win at Home First podcast. And today's a fun guest in the standpoint of, I've been a fan of his. When from Mizzou football, Chase Coffman played at Mizzou shortly after I graduated, so it was fun to watch him. And then he was in the NFL for 8 years for some different teams. And to have the chance to actually sit and talk with him, and then seeing that he's strong in his faith and a strong family man, I was like, I've got to figure out how to get him on this podcast. And so I reached out to him, and here he is. So Chase, thank you for being on the podcast.
Yeah, Corey, I appreciate you having me and reaching out. And I don't know if this part was recorded, but being a man of faith, I really appreciate the praying before we even got onto this. That's something that I've been trying to do daily in the things that I go into, and in my meetings and my calls and my podcasts, whatever I'm doing, trying to pray before it and even after it, because God goes before, he goes behind, and he's always with us.
Oh man, that's cool. And that prayer is not recorded. But partly why I do the prayer is for this podcast and with the guests, and I do it for everyone, is a couple of reasons. One, to invite God into the conversation and have him in the conversation, that the things that you and I are talking about can be helpful. And quite honestly, Chase, it's a reminder to me that it's all about bringing God glory and not about myself or the guests, because most of the guests I talk to have their own platforms and building their own brand. And so it's just a level set of, hey, it's about God's glory, not my glory. And so that helps because if I don't, if I'm not careful, I'm probably falling in some bad traps.
There's those traps for all of us, man.
So Chase, what is that key trait that you see that leaders need to have in order to win at home first?
Gosh, that's such a good question, and something that, so one of my buddies, his name's Mark Ellis. He was a national championship wrestler at Mizzou. And we've been friends since 5th grade. He works at the Fellowship of Christian Athletes here in Kansas City right now. And he gave me this book called Wisdom Walks by Dan Britton. And it's 52 little devotionals for about 4 pages each. And one of them the other day was, the kind of leaders that there are in the world. And I think in society today, we talk about, we want to be leaders, right? Leaders are looked up to. They have titles, they have, they kind of get praised. And there's a couple different kinds, a leader, a servant leader, and a servant. And, I think that I've always heard it said, being a servant leader is one of the best things you can do, serving others. Jesus washed the feet of his disciples, he was a servant to everybody. And this kind of brought up a little bit different concept of, the servant of, like, it doesn't even matter if you have a title. It doesn't matter if you ever even get recognized for your accomplishments, right? And
right.
On this world, in this world, because, if you are just serving to, like we just talked about, to honor God, then it shouldn't matter. Your rewards should always, you should want to store up your rewards in heaven and not on this earth. So kind of that question, like that's something that's really been on my mind since reading that, is just having a heart to serve without the intent of ever getting back. and yet, like, yeah, I want to get back. I made it to the NFL, and my goal was to work hard and to practice well and to, score touchdowns and make blocks and on special
Right.
teams tackles or, whatever, and have the reward of winning the game or being recognized as a great, athlete at my position and the awards that come with that. Right. And that's something that I continue to try to pray about and really ask for wisdom and discernment through.
Well, what a small world, because today, earlier, I talked to Dan Britton at FCA on the podcast.
Small world.
So he recorded, and what makes it us back to the small world again. I won't go the whole story, but I saw him at the Kansas City airport when I came back in October to see my family. I saw him there. I didn't know who he was. He was leading his team. I thought that was, his team of employees. I thought it was pretty cool. I put my head down doing some work. I look back up. He is over here by himself on the phone praying to somebody. I'm like, I don't know who this guy is, but I'm going to go talk to him. He's a leader. Yeah. He's praying in public, to somebody on the other end of that phone. I'm going over there, talking to him, handing him my book, and it was just great. And it led to the conversation today. So it's cool that you know him. How you and I connected via, it's LinkedIn, but I just, due to mutual friends, due to all that social media, your profile was coming up and saw that, well, yeah, I obviously remembered you from being a football player, but then saw in your post and even in your bio, you're strong in your faith, strong in family. And I was like, that's awesome. That's bold. And so thus reached out. And for you, Chase, what does that look like? Has that been, being strong in your faith all your life? Did you pick it up at another level, come out of college, or, what's that journey been like for you?
Oh yeah, it's been a steady climb, and I hope to continue that climb.
Yeah, that's right. Don't we all, right?
Yeah. So my parents, they made the decision before I was born to accept Christ into their hearts. And so I grew up going to church, learning about God, learning about a relationship with God, learning about accepting God into my heart, and kind of all the Bible stories that, anybody familiar with the Bible, and some people maybe even not familiar with the Bible, have heard about. And, as I got older and, you kind of get that first taste of getting to make that decision on your own in college, and still knew the right things to do, but, probably didn't go to church as much, especially during the football season. You have a Saturday game, there's all kinds of stuff going on after the game. If it's not, even if it's a late game, there's stuff going on after the game. And then the next day you're tired and sore, and you got lifting, and you got, film to recap and rehash the game, and, all these things, but you still got to say, like, all right, these are my priorities. And so I think that was kind of the first time when I had to start making that decision, and it wasn't great off the bat, but I remember, trying to, all right, like I have to get back to church. And it wasn't always, understanding. At that point, it was, even up to that point, it was kind of like checking the boxes of being a Christian, instead of having a relationship with God and like hearing and discerning, the Holy Spirit in my life. And so,
well, your excuses for not going to church in college because of football are a lot better than mine, because I didn't go because of football. But I wasn't on the field. I was going to the games and going to Harpo's.
There was a lot of nights that I did the same.
Oh man, but
I played, but
yeah, no, it's funny.
But there's like a major, some people have like a big turnaround from, darkness to light, or, whatever you have. But my kind of major point of like the relationship and taking a step out in faith was in my fourth year in the NFL. So I had been cut a couple times at this point, and I was with the Atlanta Falcons on their practice squad. And I remember, practicing hard. This was a team that the first year there that I was with them in Atlanta, and I had really like fit into this offense, being, more of a receiving tight end, and had a coach that I really gelled with and helped me learn how how to technique wise get my blocking down to another level that I could, sustain and do well and be serviceable in that area. His name was Chris Selfo. And the coaches had kept telling me, keep working hard, keep doing the things you're doing. You're going to get an opportunity. It's not if, but when. And there's a lot of 100% injury rate in football. And, not that we ever want people ahead of us to get injured, but it happens. And you have to be ready for that when it does. And so the inevitable happened. One of the guys in front of me got injured. And I remember sitting at home with my wife watching the game. It was an away game against the New Orleans Saints. And I was in Atlanta with my wife and sitting there. I was like, all right, like here, like, dang, that stinks for him that he got hurt. But like, here's my opportunity. That looked really bad. And he's out for the rest of the game. Like pads are off, everything. Like, I think I may be getting a shot. And then the next day, heard from two friends that I had played with, one in Cincinnati, one in Tampa Bay, that said, hey, we're coming in to Atlanta for a tryout. Come up to the facility and say hi. And both of these guys weren't eligible for practice squad. And so I knew that if they were coming in for a tryout and that if they signed them, that would mean that takes the spot that I was kind of told, like, you're next in line for. And so, I thought I deserved this spot. And this is, this is my big chance. And that kind of upset me. And I didn't want to be upset at those guys, but like, man, like what the heck? This is, this is what I've been waiting for. And I remember being really, really upset about that. And then that night, just laying in bed with my wife and praying to God, like, God, if practice squad is all you have for me, or if, this is the last week that I ever get to play football, it's for you. I know you have a plan for me. And kind of taking that forward and really taking some big leaps in my faith, my growth in my relationship with God since that point in time. And I got cut quite a bit after that too. And luckily, with getting cut, I had the opportunity to continue getting cut by being re-signed and having opportunity. But each time after that, it wasn't as much as a dagger as those first few times getting cut, because I knew, like, I'm gonna put in my work. I'm gonna do what I feel God has put on my heart to do, and try to do it in a way that is pleasing to God. And if it doesn't work out the way that I think it should work out, then that's fine. I'm gonna let God lead me and God guide me to wherever He wants me to be, and hold on to the things that I think are success a little bit looser.
So what happened that night? You made a comment about that night in Atlanta doing prayer. What happened? Was there just a peace that came over you, an audible you heard? I mean, what kind of took place that shifted your mindset?
Yeah, good. That's a good question. So it was peace, just the peace of, like I'm gonna do what I can control regardless of the circumstances around me.
Yep.
And that's something that I think everybody can take away from is, like there's, especially with this last year, COVID and, racial tensions and presidential election and
right,
indecisiveness and a lack of truth in, in different media outlets. I mean, there's so many different things that you can say, but when it comes down to it, are you being the person that you expect others be to you?
Right.
Or are you just adding to it?
Yep. No, it's so good. I had a conversation with a friend mentor the other night, just talking about, at the end of the day, Jesus' greatest, command, like when the lawyer says, what's the greatest command? And he says to love God with your mind, body, and soul. Well, what's the second one? Well, to love others as you want to love yourself. It's just like, it's all about love, and so much 2020 and really all areas of all years is if there was more love and less, just judgment and my opinion versus your opinion, just all those things, man, be making so much more progress, be incredible. Your NFL story about that piece, I love how you said you had the opportunity to get cut. But I know a lot of the people listening here don't have NFL experience, but they have been in the company, thought they were slotted for that next promotion, but someone else got it. Whether they came in from another company, they came from another division. So, and I think you're exactly right. For people just to have a piece that, God's at work in us, and it may not be for this next promotion. Maybe he's preparing us for something that we don't even know down the road.
Something, yeah. And I mean, that's something that, like, you just have to be fine with. And another thing that I was hearing the other day was that exact thing that you said. For somebody in like, this world is just not fair. Let's face it. And if you're continuing to put in the hard work, like, people around they know that you may have got screwed for your promotion, or that guy got a contract when really you should be the guy getting the contract. And I mean, that's what really is valuable in this. I mean, I think in eternity is, those values, that character, that the morals that you continue to uphold, regardless if people, give you the short end of the stick time and time again.
Right. Thank you very much for listening to today's episode. I hope you are enjoying it so far. Before we go back to the rest of this episode, I want to share with you my book, Win at Home First. Some of you have read it, so thank you very much. For others of you, you have not. And I encourage, if you're looking for a resource to help you with these times of your work is now in your home and your home is now in your work, and what this looks like, this book is being helpful to many leaders like you. Forbes magazine said it was one of 7 books everyone on your team should read. And the book is broken up into 4 different sections to help you. First is about you, understand who you are. The second is marriage and ideas and tips to help with your marriage. Third is parenting. And the last is work. So these 4 different sections to help you recalibrate during this time and to help move forward. So if you are needing additional resources, I encourage you to check out my book, Win at Home First. It is available on Amazon as well as Audible. And so on to the rest of the episode. Thank you very much. How was it living out your faith when you're in the NFL? Did you find it? I mean, it seemed like they would be challenging with a lot of the pressures of just kind of the all about image, things like that, the competitiveness. But did you end up having some brothers in the locker room that you were actually able to grow in faith with?
Yeah, each stop that I had out of the 6, get involved with the team chaplain, and usually there's probably anywhere from like 6 to 10 other guys on the team that would be a part of like the regular, meeting weekly, and be in that little like 30-minute slot of time when either people would be napping or you get your lunch and go into another room instead of just hanging out in the cafeteria, whatever it was, or even after practice when everybody's leaving or doing whatever, like, you setting that time aside to connect with those guys and continue growing in my faith. Every Saturday night, or if it was a different day of the week game, you'd have your chapel service that night before, and kind of get a good word in there. And usually quite a bit more people would attend that. And my dad actually played 11 years in the NFL. And one of the things that he said early in his walk with Christ, or leading up to it, was, God was kind of like a Santa Claus, right?
Yeah.
You go to the chapel service because you pray that God's going to, be for your team the next day. and there, there's some seeing that, on each team, and looking back on it, there's so much more, and such a better example of a Christian that I could have been, that I probably wasn't at that time. But man, the professional sports is tough. You're a young man. You don't have much life experience, much money experience, much relationship experience or business experience, and you're kind of thrown to the wolves of the temptations of this world, on a pretty high level. And if you don't have that support group around you leading you in the right direction, and the right direction is kind of based on what your baseline of values is. So as a Christian, it's easy to kind of see that, what we believe, and some people that believe in other things kind of have a different baseline, which is where I was talking to my buddy Mark that I mentioned the other day. I was reading the fruits of the Spirit, and after
Right.
it mentions all the fruits of the Spirit, it says, "Against these things there is no law."
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's a pretty good baseline for all of us that we all agree on.
Yeah. Yeah. I love your honesty about, well, maybe I could have been, a little bit better Christian going
Yeah.
forward in the NFL. And I mean, I love the honesty, and obviously we all could. I was talking to actually a client today in regard to something about kind of wish I would have been leading better, like Christ here over this last year too. Like what I was telling him, and I remind myself is like release that. I mean,
Hmm.
forgive yourself for that. Hey, maybe you could have done things differently in the locker room, but hey, release that. And it's a
Yeah.
new day, and it's going forward. I mean, I love in Lamentations
Yeah.
3:22 where it says that God gives us new mercies every day. So
Every day.
he'll take us where we're at. He doesn't want to stay in there. So, all right, fine. Maybe you could have done some better things in the NFL. I could have done some better things in corporate world, but
Yeah.
now to go forward. So let's figure out how
Hmm.
to be the light in all conversations going forward.
Yeah. Yeah. Every day. One of the things that you talk a lot in sports, and it's easy to see in sports. Of does your actions match your words, right? Because you're graded on such a
Yeah.
minute to minute, play to play level. But when you look at like the stories and the heroes of the Bible, right? Like some of them were some of the biggest screw ups, and God still used them in amazing, mighty ways, at 80 plus years old. So, so that's a good, God's mercies are new every day, and He can still use me even if I've been imperfect up to today.
Yeah, that's right. Up until today. Yeah. Well, we talked about wisdom earlier in that Proverbs book. Is I had a mentor tell me, wisdom is spelled WISDUMB. I got all my wisdom because of all the dumb
Mhm.
mistakes I made. Chase, what was most surprising to you about your time in the NFL?
Um, that's a really good one, and I would say the fulfillment that I thought that it would bring.
That's amazing. I didn't
uh,
even know what your answer would be. That is incredible.
like that's a childhood dream that so many people it gives me goosebumps saying that, because like it is a childhood dream, right? Like, and so many people, and I had an 8-year career. My last year I only played a couple games, so it's arguable that you could say 7 or 8, but um, but like I got to play 5 years past what is the average right now is 3,
Average is
and
3, huh?
average is 3, and I got to play be a part of it for 5 more years past that. And you think like there's a point in your life that if I do this, I made it,
Yeah.
right? But like a bigger picture, sports is always going to end, and like you always hear, even growing up, that there's life after sports, that almost everybody doesn't get to choose when they leave. They don't get to go out on their terms. You don't get to retire, riding off in the sunset, have the contract that you want with the team that you want, win championships. And even then, people saw Tom Brady, recently after, he won this last Super Bowl, that very next week getting out and working out again because he wants the next one.
Yeah.
Like when
Yeah.
like it's a lifelong body of work.
Yeah.
It's not, it doesn't end with professional football. It doesn't end with, whatever that thing is for you. And so my outlook has changed a little bit to that long-term vision of like, man, until the day that the second that I pass away on this earth and go up to be in front of God,
Yeah.
I need to be using the life that He has given me, the time that He's given me, in a way that is honoring to Him.
Hmm.
And that's not always, hard work and grinding it out and this and that, but for each person and each season of life, that's it's going to be different, and that's why it's so hard, because no two people are the same.
Right. I mean, that's incredible. You said fulfillment. Like you thought that you would get that fulfillment, right? Childhood dream. I mean, me being a guy and loving,
Hmm.
sports, and to think, oh man, played 8, he played 8 years in the NFL. I mean, he's got to feel he made it and all those different things. And I've read enough, heard enough to know that, I had a conversation with a Navy SEAL, and he thought when he made it to the top, he was one of the top in the group. We talked about my book before we hit record, but that's an introduction, or part of the introduction in the book is, telling this story of Chad Williams, where he made to the top being a Navy SEAL, but yet it wasn't enough. And so for you to say that as well, it's just like, and there's so many listeners who are like, hey, when I get that corner office, when I get that particular job title, when I make 6 figures, or when I make 7 figures, or whatever the numbers are, or whatever titles it is, at the end of the day, every single one of those things are temporary. And when we get them, they don't fill that void that only God can fill. And so it's where are we taking our questions of what our identity is? And it's such a good reminder, even just hearing you, being honest and vulnerable, to say that the NFL did not give the fulfillment. And so thanks for sharing that.
Yeah. And looking, not that it wasn't a really cool experience, right? And it's taught me so much, because it did. And it's provided an amazing head start to life for myself and my wife and my family. And you never would have probably reached out to me if I hadn't, hadn't played the way that I played at college, and played the way that, had the opportunities that I had in the NFL. And so, now I'm able to use that, going forward with my life as that platform, and to speak life, to speak encouragement into people, and tell them that, that exact thing, that this, things in life are not what is going to fulfill you. And that's led me to my next career in life, which is, financial advising and learning more about money management. And that's something that, had I been on track and got the things that I wanted to out of the NFL, as far as like the 30 million, whatever $1 million, second deal, right? Played out my rookie contract, made Pro Bowls, won the Super Bowl, had the next big deal and all that stuff. I may not be in this position now where, money is such a thing that, people idolize, and, myself included sometimes, and I try not to, but, we're called to steward it wisely. And how many of us, even do that? And so for me to continue learning that for myself and my family, and the people close to me, and the people that are now reaching out to me, and a lot of still me reaching out to them, to see if there's an opportunity to help in that area. Right.
Yeah.
I'm going to be honest. I probably wouldn't be here if I had got that opportunity that I wanted to chase in the NFL, but it's opened another door for me that, I am passionate about now, and that will, provide a lot of good things to a lot of people.
Yeah. You're also solving a problem that's out there, and it helps with your why of NFL players. You said it earlier, but not knowing what to do with money. I'd seen a post you did earlier where Travis Kelce comes out and says, I blew my rookie contract. It is all gone. And I'm sure you've heard that story a million times. You're like, no more. I'm putting a stop to it. Just like with me. My passion is I made some stupid mistakes in my own home, and I don't want that ever to happen again. So my passion is to help business leaders win at work and win at home, because I know what happens when you don't win at home. And so for me, that's a problem I'm trying to solve. And for you, same thing. You saw the money issues, and you're like, I'm going to serve the NFL. And I know you also service other families as well. But no matter how much money you have, if you don't pay attention to it, it's gone.
Quick. Go quick.
No matter how much it is, it goes fast, right?
I think the number in professional football, I think the number is between 70 and 80% within a couple years of being out of the league are broke and divorced.
70%?
70 to 80%.
Man.
I know it was like low 80% when I started in the NFL. That's the number that they would say. I think 82%. And there's with technology and the opportunity to reach people and get more stats out to guys, and just educate them. Another thing that I'm trying to do is, educating people on finances, but the stats are, it's crazy. And, the more people can see that and understand the why of how you get to that point, right? Everybody says, if I would have got that contract, there's no way I would have blown that money.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Well,
that's what everyone says, right?
what does your financial picture look like now? Are you blowing the amount of money that you have now? Are
Right.
you wise? Are you wise with that money? Well, then what makes you think you would be wise with more than that?
Yep. Well, it's how we steward the small things, right?
It
Well, we get
is.
the larger things. What's God talking to you about right now?
Um, kind of that question that we talked about early, that the just being a servant.
Mm-hmm.
I've, you know, climbed that ladder of success, and like I said, not the success that I thought it would be and dreamed it would be, but getting to the NFL and being able to be there for 8 seasons, parts of 8 seasons, and walking the walk and talking the talk, and now as I've transitioned to make sure that I do that same thing, as far as still talking the talk but also backing it up. So I
Right.
don't want to I don't ever want to be the person that says, I'm a leader. I'm, I'm a great husband. I'm a great father. I'm, a great financial advisor. I know this, I know that. Like, I don't want to ever be the person that says that. I want to work and serve others so that, hopefully they, at some point say, like, man, I see the way that he acts towards
Mm-hmm.
others. I see the way that he treats people. I see the way that he treats his wife. I see the way that he treats his kids. See the way that he, acts in his office, or helps people manage their money and their finances and their life goals. And, that's the kind of person that I want to be around. And I'm I'm far from it, but striving to get there, right, in all
No, that's good.
aspects. And that's where, also kind of going back to earlier, where, like, I mean, it's never going to be a point to where I made it.
Mm-hmm.
And luckily I've come to that conclusion now, instead of chasing that point in life where I feel like it can end.
Yeah.
uh where my
Well,
where my work can end, because I mean, it never will. If I retire from this job, it'll be, another area in my life that I'm called to serve. So
no, you got to have that mindset, because otherwise, I mean, the chase we always have. We talk about the NFL, that chase. Well, wealth advisement, it's how many assets under management, how many families am I
yeah,
serving, and is my name part of the firm? And it's just like bang, boom,
yep.
boom, boom, and all right, great,
Hmm.
you're serving 300 families. All right, now it's 600 families, and it just the climb,
Hmm.
and so
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
that
this amount of
selfish versus
dollars under.
godly ambition.
Yeah, 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 so much. And then, again, back to that, I want my rewards to be in heaven. And yes, earthly rewards are sweet and amazing, and they feel good, and all this other stuff. But you know what if what if all that falls out? Because it can.
Hmm.
There is one thing that is certain, that is stable, that is not changing, and that's Jesus Christ. And so that's where what I want to be my base and my rock. And that's what I'm striving for now, as I take on all those things that I mentioned.
Yeah. Well, you're in this new life now where it's a lot of sales development. It's calling. It's getting people to come and
Hmm.
put their money with you. And there's ups, there's downs. How are you, just Chase, from a mindset standpoint, kind of getting in the game every day? I mean, what's that look like? I mean, there's some days you probably roll out of bed, you're ready to go. There's other days you're feeling, kind of knocked down. Like, what are those routines that you have that are helping you kind of pursue excellence right now?
Like I said, one of the biggest things for me has been, my time management and my scheduling.
Mm-hmm.
I have a wife and three kids that are 7, 5, and 1.
Get your
And
hands full.
yeah, I got my hands full. And it's all a blessing. But trying to find the times when to go, trying to find the times when to be slow in those perspective areas, because I don't want to just go fast, all family and no work, or all work and no family. I want there to be a healthy balance. And I know everybody wants that, right?
Which is, do
But
they
I mean,
recalibrate to get it right? Because we're all going to work a little hard at a particular season, and we just got to
yeah,
recalibrate
there's
back.
there's always going to be your training camp, right, when you're gone for
Yep.
3 weeks in the hotel and away, and going from meetings at 6 in the morning to 9 and 10 at night. And then there's going to be the off seasons. So, it's a lot easier to see that in football than in regular life and regular jobs. So still learning that while also doing the small daily tasks, so that when the opportunities come, whether that's a professional athlete or a business owner or somebody that's just starting out.
What are you most excited about in the next month?
The next month, well, tomorrow I celebrate, my wife and I celebrate 10 years, our 10-year anniversary. So
awesome. Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you. Getting into double digits. So excited about that. And also working on an opportunity to just present some educational pieces to some students. So working on that, and it's also a good thing to where, like I said, to talk on their level and give them action steps that
high school, are they college, like what?
College students that they can be thinking about right now, that they can take steps to do right now. And then maybe just throw in a few high level things of, here's something that, like, the next step, here's your big goal that you can look forward to, that these action steps are going to get you to.
That's cool. What is the best way for listeners to get a hold of you if they want to work with you, reach out, learn from you, or have you manage their money?
Yeah, so like you did, LinkedIn is a good one.
Yeah.
Find me on LinkedIn. Also, as you see on the screen behind me, BMG Advisors. If you go to bmgadvisors.com, you can find our information of where I work and reach out. My work email is ccoffman@bmgadvisors.com. So shoot me an email if you got any questions or anything like that. I also have a Twitter account, a picture of me and my family at the hospital after we had our third and got, depending on what God's plans are, last.
There you go.
Last baby. So those are always, and
cool.
And the people listening, if you want to reach out, don't feel like I'm going to press you to be a client and press you to find those ways. Don't feel like you can't reach out just to say, hey, what's up? Because something that I've had through my NFL experience is lots of advisors reaching out and pushing to be that person, and that's something that I've told myself that I do not want to be. I want to be as far away from that and be respectful of people and their priorities, their goals, their time. So
good.
Feel free to reach out on any of those platforms.
Awesome. Well, Chase, thank you very much for your time today. I greatly appreciate and glad our paths have crossed.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, Corey, and it's been a pleasure getting to know you, man.
I want to thank you for listening to my podcast, Win at Home First. I am so grateful to hear from listeners like you that this content has been helpful. So now I would love for you to pay it forward. I want to get this message in the hands of more listeners. We need leaders to be winning both at home and at work, especially during this time. So please take a minute to share this episode with somebody you think would find value in it, as well as rate and subscribe. As a thank you, please visit my website at CoreyMCarlson.com to download a free resource that people are finding value in. Thank you very much.
This is thepodcastfactory.com.